How to configure your GPT to respond in a JSON and transform that back to a data table. If you're looking for something like this, then this video is for you. Let's go. So this is a workflow that I have created and that I'm going to explain to you. And the workflow is that we are calling the GPT from UiPath and we're transforming its response back to a data table. And we're doing that by utilizing options in GPT where we are providing him with a schema that we want him to use in order to respond only in a JSON format. So we're going to go over each of the activities and we're going to go over the whole workflow, and I'm going to explain you how I did this. And before that, let's take a look on how and on what the bot is doing and what is the response that we're going to have. So the business case behind this is one from I think it was a bot challenge where we had a random doctor's notes. And in those notes, of course, every doctor would type in differently. And we had to extract the values using generative AI technologies. And based on those informations, we are going to extract certain informations about the customers, about the clients, right? So the notes are in here in the doctor's notes file, and you can see that we have some text information about each of the candidates, not the candidates, but the patients. So we have 3 patients in total. And we want to extract the information from these patients based on certain information, and we want to extract certain information. For example, blood pressure, patient's name, height, weight, and medication as well. So how are we doing that? We're calling the GPT and we're letting him extract all the information. So let me run the workflow once and I'll show you how this looks. And then we can go and analyze the whole thing. So if we open up and we can see that we have the results data table. And if we open up this Excel file, you can see that we have extracted all the informations from the text file. So we have the name, we have the weight, we have the height, we have the blood pressure, we have the oxygen level, the heart rate, and we also have the medication, which is for some patients we have multiple, and for some there is only one. So that this is going to be an extra use case that we are going to define. So how do we did this? The first thing that you would need to do is to install the web API packages. So you would go to manage packages, you would go to all packages, and you would find the web API. Once you have that, I'm not going to update it right now, but once you have that, click save, and you're going to have access to the HTTPS activity. After that, we need to add 2 imports, so 2 namespaces in our workflow. So that is the Newtonsoft JSON and Newtonsoft JSON link. So we're going to use that in order to create our variables. And this is all the prerequisites that we need. Additionally, you also need the access token from the GPT. And you can get this by going over to platform.openapi.com/API keys. And in there, you can generate your secret key. And I suggest that you create a credential for it in your orchestrator. So you will have to pull the information and that will be hidden a little bit. So the first thing that we do in this workflow would be to get the access key. So one interesting thing that I also want to show you is the UiPath built-in capabilities of generative AI. So if you have some newer versions of UiPath Studio, you will probably notice that once you go into the assign activity, you will have this, oh, I don't have it. Okay, never mind. I'll explain that in another video. So the first thing that we need to do is to get the password. I'm also transforming this password back to a string and pushing that into my web call HTTP activity. The second thing is that we need to create a JSON object. So my JSON body for the API call is something like this. So in a role, we need to put a system role. In there, we're going to specify how we want our response to be. So in there, I'm going to put a JSON schema, and that is going to define a response. That is going to define what kind of a response I want to receive from GPT. And in a role user, we're going to have a content that is basically the message of doctor's notes. So keep that in mind. And this doctor notes is currently in TXT format because I don't want to bother you with automating. This was extracted from some web application or something like that. So what do we need to do? First off, we're reading the schema. So we have created a schema, JSON schema, based on which we want our response to be defined in. And because we don't want this to be in a string format because it's going to be messy, I have created it in a JSON format, and we're just reading that in our automation and putting that in a string so that we can use it later. And I'm also reading the doctor's notes. After that, we are creating our JSON object. So if we take a look at our JSON object, we can see that we have our whole body has two objects. So it has a model and it has a message. And inside the message, we have two objects, right? So we need, first, we are creating this message, and later on, we are creating this model. And I'll show you how I create this. So I'm creating it with variables J object. It is a little bit easier. You can create it from a string. You can also define this in a string because the HTTP activity, the HTTP activity is accepting body as a string. So you can create it as a string, but I think that this is a little bit of a better method because it gives us flexibility and we have a better view of what we are creating. So how do we do this? The first thing that I did is I created a list of JSON objects. So you would go in here, you would browse for a type, you type in list, you would find the list that you need. So we're finding the list. I cannot find it right now. Let's slow down a bit. Okay, so this list, and in here you would browse for JObject, right? So you'd find JObject. And this is how you would create that variable. So we have a list of JObjects which will represent our message. And then we're creating the role for system and for users. And we're doing that by using the append to item collection. So this is basically add to collection, but now it's called, I think, append to collection. So this is the activity that we're using to create a system role. And let me explain to you how we're doing that. So the collection would be, of course, the list message. And because we have a little bit of a newer version of UiPath Studio, whatever we put in, the Studio is automatically going to define as property, so we don't have to worry about that. We don't need to select it. And in our collection, you will see how I create it. So I typed in JSON object from object, and in here you can see that I created a key called role, which would basically represent me this value, and I put in the value that I want. So in this case, it's a system. And in a key content, I'm giving the explanation of how our GPT model is going to behave. So the system role is something that we want to basically how we want our system to behave. So for example, you're an expert in something, you would put that in a system role, and then in a user role, you would just put your message that you want to be extracted. So in a content role, I am putting a description. I'm giving you a description of patient. I need you to extract the information from the text. You will be receiving multiple patient info. Please respond only in JSON format following the below schema. And then I'm putting the schema that we have defined in response schema JSON file. So that is how I'm creating the first object. And then I'm also adding one more object to that message. That would be the message that we want to be extracted. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm giving it a key role user in this case, and a key content the doctor's notes. So this is the text that we have read from the doctor's notes. So that is the beginning. And then I'm calling GPT model. So if you pull the HTTP client, this is the HTTP request activity. You can confirm all the values in here. And let's take a look at these values. So I'm going to delete this. Let's take a look at these values. So I have increased the timeout a little bit. My request method would be post, of course. So you're basically creating something that is in here. Then I would put the endpoint. The endpoint is API, openapi.com, chat completion. So that is the endpoint. I'm putting in the OAuth2 token the password, so that this is my API key. And then in the body, I am putting this message object, and I'm also putting the model, and I'm transforming that into a string. So it is a little bit, it's not clunky, but it's not that straightforward. But if you take a look, I'm basically doing the same thing. I'm putting in a JSON object from object, key model. So this is the model that I'm going to use, GPT 3.5 Turbo. And the key message is basically a JSON array from an object that we have created. So this one. And I'm transforming that back to a string in order to send out a request to the GPT. And we also have two variables defined. So str response would be our response in a string format, and ent response status would be the status of the API. And later on, you can, of course, modify this workflow in order to use it in other ways. But I have put it in a way where if the response status is starting with 2.0, and if not, then just like throw some exceptions, and that is not the use case that we're going to deal with. It's not important. So that is my configuration of the HTTP request activity. So we can put a breakpoint in here. Let's close this document. We can put a breakpoint in here, and we can call it once, and we can see what the HTTP request activity is going to return to us, because that is the response that we need to modify, but that is the response that we're going to extract, right? So we go in here, watch str response, and this is our response. Let's take that response and put it in. Okay, let's put that response and put it in here. So we can select that our language is going to be a JSON. And you can see that this is the information that we need, the content. And you can see that it responded so this is a JSON in a string, and this is also a JSON in a string. So we need to extract the content first, and then we need to transform this content back to a JSON, and then we can basically loop through it and extract all the information that we need. So you can see that this is a little bit clunky, but you will see we will work on it. So let's stop the workflow and let me explain how to do that. The first thing that we do is we are parsing this string, the first string. We're passing the whole string back to a JSON object. You can see that this JSON response is of type JSON object, J object. So that is the first thing that we are doing. And then we are extracting the answer back to a string. We could probably use this in order to, maybe it's about better way, I just noticed now, but yeah, let's do it in this way. So we're going to choices, first item, then messages, then content. So we are going to go into choices, then messages, then content, and we're going to extract this one. And we're going to get that back into a string value. Then we're going to deserialize that JSON object, into our we're going to deserialize that string back into the JSON object that we were expecting. And if you have a newer version of Web API, you could put a request in here. You can put a response sample in here, but we don't have it. You can check my previous video about that. So we're deserializing this, and I have noticed that sometimes our GPT is not perfect. So sometimes it is returning us a JSON, and it is returning us these characters. So sometimes I'm replacing this, and this serialized JSON is creating our actual response that we need. So that is the response in a JSON format that we need, that is representing the extracted values from the doctor's notes. After that, we're building the data table. So we're building the data table with headers with the values that we need. So the patient's name, weight, height, blood pressure, oxygen, heart rate, and medication. And then we are extracting the information from that response. So we are creating from this JSON object, we're transforming that object into a JSON array. So you can see that this fields array is of type GArray. So we can loop through that and extract all the information that we need. So that is exactly what we're doing. We're looping over those fields. And if you have the newer version of activities, you can see that it automatically puts the correct object that we want to loop through. So that is Newton soft JSON link JToken. So we are looping through that. And we are accessing each individual value. So I can also put a breakpoint in here. So you will see how this first how this string answer is going to look like, and then how this fields array is going to look like. And then we're looping over each of the patients. So remember that we have 3 patients, and we're extracting the values of name, weight, height, blood pressure, blood oxygen level, heart rate. And this is something that I'm going to explain additionally. And we're adding those values into our data table JSON response. And after that, we're just creating results Excel file. So pretty simple from here. And you will see that this has a little bit of a different logic. So let me run this once again, and let me remove the breakpoint from here. And the shortcut for breakpoint is F9. And let's see how that response is going to look, and what are we going to loop over. So if we go here, this is not the newest versions. So the newest version of UiPath activities will let you select this value. So you can put it in here, so you don't have to retype it. But let's see how our answer looks. And this is the string format of our response from GPT. So this basically is extracted. And now that we paste it, it looks something like this. So we almost have it. And you will see we have patients, and that is this patients. So if we had something like patients and then something inside, and then we want to access that, we would type in patients / then something else. So this path in here is really important. So make sure that you type it in correctly. So this is our string representation of our JSON format. And you can see that this medication prescription is a little bit different. So it's an object that have multiple values, right? So we have to create a separate logic to work with that. And let's see also the fields. And you will see the fields. Now it's on a list of JSON objects, and you can see it in here. So let's stop here. Let's put one more breakpoint, and let's stop it before this, because using just fields medication Where is my, can I access this one and copy this one? Perfect. If we just use this, it's still a list of 2 elements. So what we're doing is, let me stop this. So what we're doing, we want that to be like comma separated, and we're joining it by a comma, and we're basically selecting everything that is in that additional object. So how I did this, I basically used the inbuilt generative AI activities in UiPath, but unfortunately I'm not into the newest version, so I cannot show you right now. And let's close this. And then I'm just adding those values in here. So you can see that this here is writing down the values. And if we take a look at the output, okay, I stopped it, but yeah, you saw the response. And that's it. That is the whole logic. I think that this is really helpful because we can define it and we can get the response from GPT in a JSON format that we want to, and it will serve us as some kind of middleware where we can transform that data. And for example, if we need to put that data into another system, we can use the schema input for that other system and tell the GPT to generate us a response in that order. So this is really powerful. This is something that is that I'm going to use definitely in the future. And if you want to use this, you can access the workflow in my GitHub. I'm going to leave the link to the repository in the comments. You can access it. So yeah, hopefully this helps. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out. Until then, happy automation.